Right, let's just take that
But
point.
there is a question of evidence here, and I think we need to look at the evidence. I have been an economist for long enough to know what those textbooks say. But it's very interesting that there's a difference between the theoretical expectation about the impact of the minimum wage and the empirical evidence. In 1982, after a long and exhaustive study conducted by the congressionally mandated Minimum Wage Study Commission, the conclusion was that the minimum wage is not the primary factor responsible for black teenage
absolutely wrong.
unemployment.
No,
all right, but
that was the conclusion of the commissioners. Now, if you read through the other 7 volumes of the reports of the professional studies in there, most of those economists that did the professional studies said that the minimum wage law has a devastating effect on teenagers.
And furthermore,
they recommended sub-minimum wage.
All right,
I just don't want you to mislead the public by looking at volume 7, because that was the conclusion of the political figure.
But I want to give another statistic.
Dr. Anderson, let me just get you to respond to Dr. Williams' point about the business deterioration being a factor. Why his explanation of the business deterioration is very different from yours.
Well, what he's saying is that the minimum wage caused it all. That if there's any problem in the inner city, it was caused by the minimum wage, and clearly that is not correct.
But what about his position that the minimum wage did, in fact, eliminate the kinds of jobs that low-skilled young people would be after, like the ushers in the theater and so forth, and prevented other
Western
jobs?
Union, for example.
I don't doubt that the minimum wage probably has had some effect on the number of jobs, but there are opportunities within existing law for employers to hire teenagers at lower than the minimum wage, and I'd give you 2 pieces of information on this. Under the Fair Labor Standards Act that is now in existence, an employer can hire a teenager at less than the minimum wage, but that program has been undersubscribed by private employers from the very time it was put on the law book. Secondly,
you mean they're not using it?
They're not using it. The point is that
the law now
that they're not using the exemptions available in law. Secondly,
the bureaucratic things that you have to do it. It makes it prohibitively expensive for somebody other than McDonald's, who hires many teenagers, to go through that process.
I'd like to give you another bit of evidence. Between 1977 and 1980, the Congress supported an act called the Youth Incentive Entitlement Program. Under that program, an employer in 17 designated communities throughout this country could hire disadvantaged teenagers at no cost. All the teenager had to do was to remain in school or to return to school for a part-time job during the school year or a full-time job during the summer. Now, under that program, a teenager was available to employers at no cost, yet less than 23% of all jobs available under that program to minority youth, and I'm talking here about 73,000 jobs, less than 23% of them were made available by the private sector.
So your point is what?
My point is that the minimum wage is not the primary factor responsible for the unemployment of black youth, and that is confirmed by studies I have conducted myself.
Well, what do you...
May I respond just to the question of the minimum wage? Because if you take the doctor's argument further, he uses this sweatshop example. I'm a little shocked and surprised, saying what do do-gooders do if they find out that the teenager or the minority or the old woman was not working for $1 an hour. All of the problems as to why teenagers and others, lack of skills, lack of productivity, has nothing to do with the minimum wage. It was designed by the Congress to put some type of a bottom as to what people should be able to get for goods and services. If the argument is that certain people don't reach that expectation of $3.35, it would seem to me that it would be in the interest of the country, certainly our poor and our black, to increase access through training programs to make certain that they would be productive. But I'm suggesting this, that if you eliminate it altogether and allow the $1 an hour to work, and it's silly to talk about this when over 11 million people are unemployed anyway, what is the difference between the good doctor suggestion and the slavery system where people who are in need of food and shelter are willing to pick cotton without any type of standard? Somebody has to do it. And it's not a farm An argument because we do have
all
illegals
right,
that come into the country doing just that.
I'm not even-
And we do have migrant laborers
I'm not even going to
doing
respond to
just
that because that's beside the point. But the point
Migrant
is now,
laborers are
now-
laborers.
Congressman,
now, I
Dr.
think that there's something for all of us to see. Now, Dr. Anderson, and I believe the congressman, wanted to say that the minimum wage law has no effect or just insignificant effect on teenage unemployment. But let's anticipate what they're going to say with response to another question. You say, well, let's have a sub-minimum wage law for young people. Now, both these guys will respond that they're against the sub-minimum wage law because they'll give firms incentives to hire kids and fire the fathers. I'm quite sure that they're going to say that. But if the minimum wage law has no effect, see, they want to have it on both sides. They want to have their cake and eat it too. First, they want to say it has no effect, and then we recommend a policy to deal with some of the effects of the minimum wage law. Then you're going to say, no, I'm against that because it will cause unemployment among older people. So which is it? Does the minimum wage law have an effect, or does it not?
I don't see